In barely 6 months, Ontario went from being a cap-and-trade province to taking the federal government to court to stop carbon pricing. It is just one instance of an about-face on something once widely praised by economists and others across the political spectrum. Canada's Ecofiscal Commission was created back in 2014 to advocate for carbon pricing. Its chair is Chris Ragan. He is also director of McGill University's Max Bell School of Public Policy, and he joins us now to reflect on how dramatically things have shifted in the past few years. Good to have you back in that chair.
Thanks for having me.
You were here almost 4 years ago when
I can't believe it's been that far.
I know that when your commission was created. Was it your view at that time that carbon pricing was actually gaining traction across the country?
No, I think it was our view at that time that there was not enough people talking about carbon pricing. So when we launched, which was November of 2014, BC had had a carbon tax in place for a few years. Quebec had just introduced a cap-and-trade system. No other province had carbon pricing really lined up, and the federal government was absent on that issue. And so we felt that there needed to be a lot more discussion around this country, both at the federal and provincial level.
You had a couple of quick wins, though. I mean, you had Preston Manning, the founder of the Reform Party, came on endorsing a carbon tax of sorts. Patrick Brown, the previous leader of the PC Party, also had it in his People's Guarantee.
So I think up until about the middle of 2018, I think we could say that the consensus was building, for sure. We had a cap-and-trade system introduced, a pretty well-designed one in Ontario from Kathleen Wynne. We had a very well-designed carbon tax with rebates and competitiveness protection introduced in Alberta. We had Manitoba that had designed a climate policy with carbon pricing at its core, and that was last year, I suppose. And then we had a federal government that said, all right, we're going to now fill in the gaps. And for any province or territory that doesn't have one, we will put one in place, but we would actually prefer you to design your own.
And Quebec was in cap and trade as well.
Quebec was cap and trade, but that was true when we started. Okay. So that was all new action, and that consensus was building until about the middle of last year.
Well, which brings us to the numbers I want to share with you and our viewers right now, because it was last November that Angus Reid did a poll showing that just over half of respondents supported the federal carbon tax. In May, an Ipsos poll here in Ontario showed, again, roughly half agreed that carbon taxes are an effective way of altering behavior and combating climate change. And yet 72% in the same sample agreed with the notion that carbon taxes in Ontario are simply a tax grab. So we've got some conflicting messages here. Given the change of government and given, Ontario's now taking the feds to court about their carbon plan, do you think you're losing ground in the battle for public opinion?
Well, I think a couple of things. So I think, first of all, relative to 3 years ago, there's just a lot more discussion about carbon pricing. A lot more discussion within governments, with opposition parties, on Main Street. And I think that's a good thing. This is a big policy change. So just like we talked a lot about deficit reduction in the 1980s and 1990s, we talked a lot about free trade before we had that. We talked a lot about it when it was under threat. This is a big policy change, and I think it's really important that Canadians talk about it. And I think really what's happened is that 4 years ago, that consensus was starting to build. It then got some serious momentum in the next few years. It's taken a while for the opposition to that policy to coalesce. Now that opposition has coalesced, and it's looking like we are lining ourselves up for a pretty serious debate in the coming election, including the provincial election in Alberta coming up in a few months.
Indeed.
So are we losing ground? Well, I think, number one, it's good that we're having this debate because that's what we do in democratic societies. Rather than throwing grenades at each other, we throw barbs at each other in debates, and that's a good thing.
You'd love the consensus to keep building.
I would, but I'd like that consensus to emerge again, re-emerge, kind of after the appropriate political battle has been fought and won. My second comment would be, I think the nature of the debate isn't as good as it should be. I think on one side of the debate there is not very good information, maybe even misinformation in some cases. I think the other side of the debate doesn't really want to engage and explain. And Canadians can be forgiven for believing a set of claims if they're not presented with the counterclaims. And so I think we've got this debate that's not in great shape.
Well, advancing his side of the debate in that chair not too long ago was Rod Phillips, the Minister of the Environment for the province of Ontario, who said, "We believe the onus of funding greenhouse gas reduction efforts should be on polluters, not on hardworking people who deserve to be able to use their own money for themselves and their families. Regulating large emitters with a system that is tough but fair will ensure that we meet our commitments to the Paris targets while ensuring that costs are not being downloaded to consumers." What's your view of the new Ontario government's approach?
Well, so I think in that quote, what I hear is what you often hear from people at different points in the political spectrum, actually, is the creation of a wedge between, big companies who are bad and the rest of us who are good. And that's just wrong. We are all emitters. We heat our homes, we drive trucks and cars and skidoos. We work at firms that actually have emissions. We all live in a very energy intensive and a very carbon intensive world. We are all emitters, and we all, in my view, need to play a role in reducing those. And to believe that you can put policies in place that will only impact those large final emitters and that will leave consumers and regular people untouched I think that's actually it's either completely wrong or it's completely disingenuous. And
Well, the
probably
companies
both.
would pass the costs on to the consumers anyway, wouldn't
Of course they would. Of course they would. And I think economically, you want a policy where everybody that is an emitter is facing those incentives to reduce those emissions. Politically, I would argue, and I'm no political expert, but politically I would argue that you'll get greater buy-in if everybody, large business, small business, and households, are all involved in the same project.
Well, the government of Ontario, the new government, says it's going to develop performance standards industry by industry. And I'm wondering, in your view, what the difference is between setting a performance standard for emissions by a particular industry versus creating a carbon price for emissions, which presumably would cover all of society.
So one of the ironies when the Ontario government released the sketch of its plan, which I think was in November, was these industry performance standards. If you look at what was provided there, they look an awful lot like the output-based pricing system that the federal government has said they will introduce, that looks in turn an awful lot like the output-based pricing system that Alberta introduced. This appears to be carbon pricing for large final emitters, where the price, where they pay a price on their emissions beyond a threshold, and that threshold is set industry by industry. So when we looked at that at Ecofiscal, we said, oh, well, they haven't called it carbon pricing for obvious reasons, because they've claimed that they don't want to use carbon pricing. But as far as we can tell, it looks like carbon pricing in a particular sector of the economy. It's not a broad-based carbon price, and for that reason, I think we would be critical, because what you really want, in my view, is to have a broad-based carbon price, meaning broad across all segments of the economy, so that everybody is facing those incentives to reduce. But I think what they have got lined up, and maybe we'll have to wait until the next set of details, but what it looks like is carbon pricing.
In which case, you're okay with it?
I'm okay with that part of their plan. Other parts of their plan, not so much.
Well, Premier Doug Ford has said that carbon pricing, in his view, quote unquote, does not work. And Mark Jacquard, who I'm sure you know, wrote a book with Jeffrey Simpson about climate change not too long ago. Climate change economist says carbon pricing is doing little to decarbonize the economy. And according to his data, the federal carbon tax will contribute only 15% to Ottawa's planned emission reductions. Alberta's carbon tax will contribute about 5% to its planned reductions. BC's climate plan is a mix of the carbon tax and regulations. One single regulation in BC that forced BC Hydro to cancel planned coal and natural gas plants and develop low-carbon options was apparently 3 times more effective than BC's carbon tax at reducing emissions. So again, the question becomes, is carbon pricing really a necessary tool to fight climate change?
Right. Great. Oh, so let's end with your final question. Is it necessary? No. You can use other ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Ecofiscal and every economist that I know says you don't have to use carbon pricing. So why would you use carbon pricing? You use carbon pricing, and Mark Jacquard agrees, because it is the lowest cost way to do it. So what created Ecofiscal in the first place was the idea not just that we should have better environmental policies, but we should have better environmental policies that are also good for the economy, and that you can actually have a healthy environment and a prosperous economy if you do it right. It's not automatic. You got to do it right. And doing it right means using the lowest cost policies you can, and those typically mean putting a price on pollution. So I would argue that carbon pricing does work. I think the evidence, whether it's from British Columbia or the UK or other countries that have introduced these, including or the state of California, carbon pricing does reduce emissions. Now, if the claim is that the plan that's put in place or planned to be put in place by the federal government is not going to do enough, I would agree. And I would say, well, a low carbon price doesn't get you where you want to be. If you want to achieve the 2030 emissions reductions targets, and if you do it with a carbon price mostly, then you're going to do it with a carbon price that's higher than $20 a ton. You might end up with a carbon price that's $125 a ton. There's some disagreement here. But if you're only going to have a carbon price of $20 or $30 or $40 a ton, then you're going to need other policies to achieve those targeted reductions. And those other policies are going to be more expensive. And Mark Jackard agrees that other policies are indeed more expensive than a carbon price. He just thinks they're politically more palatable.
Well, I was just going to say, this is where we get into the issue of politics. And I know the current member for Ottawa Centre in the Ontario legislature, when he was running for office, mused about a carbon tax that was around what you were talking about, $100, $150 a ton. And I'm telling you, the Premier's been beating him like a drum ever since then, ever since he said that. If politics is the art of the possible, this seems a little impossible at the moment. Would you agree?
I think maybe we framed it wrong. So if people say to me, well, we can't have a carbon tax as high as $125 a ton, I would say, well, why can't we have income taxes that low?
No one's saying that. Maybe you should be saying that. Yeah.
But we should, because we need to talk about that second half of the policy. So if we're going to have a carbon tax of $75 or $125 or even $200 a ton, which, by the way, doesn't put gas up much beyond where it was in the summer of 2014. But let's suppose we have a carbon price at $150 a ton, and we use the revenues and we return 100% or even only 90% of those revenues back to either businesses in terms of tax cuts, or individuals in terms of personal income tax cuts, or checks in the mail to low-income households, or some combination of all of those. We could actually then send all of those incentives through the price system to reduce emissions, but at the same time, we're not making people poorer. We're not making businesses poorer, and you're not scaling up the size of government.
I hear what you're saying, but it may be that the reality of trying to get that message out in politics today is that the public only hear the first part and they just don't hear the second part, or if they hear it, they don't believe it. And we know the federal government has talked about rebates, right? Bringing money in on the carbon tax and rebating it as well. For some reason, that isn't catching on.
So two things. I do think that these conversations, these policies are complex, and I think they need to be explained. The government has introduced a policy, the federal government has introduced what their rebates will look like, but I haven't heard them actually explain them very much. And one of my criticisms would be on the federal government, whether it's the Minister of the Environment or the Prime Minister. I actually don't think they've done a very good job in explaining why a carbon price is a better way to do this than the alternatives.
Why don't you
and
explain
how
it right
a carbon
now?
Take will work.
Take a shot at it right now.
Which would you like me to explain?
I'd like you to explain the two sides of this coin, which is, yes, there's a federally imposed carbon tax, but there will be rebates for Canadians as well.
So the logic of a carbon price isn't about trying to get you to reduce emissions because you're poorer. That's not the logic. The logic is we're going to put a carbon price in place. The carbon-intensive things in your life are going to become more expensive. So think about gasoline or heating oil. They will become more expensive. You will then change the way you do things. Whether you are a household or a small business or a large business, you will, over time, you will move away from carbon and you will do whatever you're doing in lower carbon ways. And that sort of substitution that takes place is a key part of what we do. And we actually do this every day in our life. You go into the grocery store, you see that beef is expensive, but fish is cheap, and so you substitute. Or you go from green vegetables to orange vegetables on a daily basis. Well, businesses do that, households do that over time. That's the first part. The second part is, well, remember, we're not trying to make you poorer. We're just trying to get you to change your behavior. So we're going to take a big chunk of that revenue, maybe even all of that revenue, and we're going to give it back to you. We could give it back to you as equal per capita checks in the mail, which is basically what they're doing in Alberta. We could do it through tax rebates. But when you get that check in the mail or the tax rebate, you can spend it on anything you want.
Okay, follow-up question then.
Yeah.
If you're taking with this hand and giving back with this hand, and it's a wash at the end of the day, why would I change my behavior?
Great question, because it's not a wash at the end of the day in terms of what you do. It's a wash in terms of your purchasing power. The whole logic is to maintain your purchasing power, but because gasoline and other carbon-intensive things are now more expensive, you do things differently. And that is the key point that I think is hard for people to get their head around. Which is, and the irony is, we do it every day in our life. But people say, well, there are no alternatives. I'm going to keep driving. Well, you might keep driving, but with a more fuel-efficient vehicle over time. You might actually start changing the way you drive. You might start changing the way you take vacations. And another point here is that we're all going to respond differently. If you're designing a set of regulations, sector by sector, including for the household sector, you're going to have the government looking over your shoulder, telling you how to do what you're doing, when to do it, what technology to use. Very inflexible for the most part. A carbon price says, you know what, we're going to put a carbon price in place. Those carbon-intensive things are going to get more expensive. You figure out how to do it. You might turn down the heat in your house. Somebody else will buy a more fuel-efficient vehicle. Somebody else takes different vacations. On the production side, people are going to make different decisions about how they change the way they produce steel or produce cement or transport stuff across rails.
But it's their choice.
It's their choice. And that flexibility is the key for why carbon price is the lowest cost way, best for the economy, to reduce emissions.
Okay, let me read one more thing to you here. This is a quote from a piece called "The Leftist Case Against the Carbon Tax," and it was published in a magazine called Briar Patch this month. Here we go. Sheldon, if you would, thanks. "We know that states have enormous power to implement climate policies that would radically reduce emissions, create jobs, and improve public services. And none of them includes putting a price on carbon as a primary measure. Here are just a few of the options. Phase out oil, gas, and coal extraction. Stop subsidizing fossil fuels. Build low-carbon energy. Initiate massive public works projects like a green housing program. Construct energy-efficient social housing for low-income residents. And retrofit existing buildings with electric heat pumps, efficient appliances, and added insulation. Employ people to clean up abandoned wells, tailing lakes, and mining waste. Work with farmers to reduce agricultural emissions." I guess it's their view that so much of the oxygen in the air is being sucked up by this carbon tax debate that we're ignoring some of these equally viable, maybe even easier to achieve options. What's your take?
Yeah, I don't think they're easier to achieve. So when I read that paragraph this morning on the plane ride in, and I thought it was breathtaking in how easy it all sounded. We'll just do all of these things. Well, number one, most of those policies are extremely difficult to design because you've got government designing the way that you want the private sector to change. So they're difficult to do. Number two, they may be extremely expensive policies to actually implement. So the Ecofiscal report wrote a report called Supporting Carbon Pricing, which was all about policies that aren't a carbon price, but can be used to support and enhance a carbon price. And you can't just use anything. Some of these policies don't work very well. Some of them undermine carbon pricing. Some of them are very expensive. For example, if you want to subsidize electric vehicles, well, in Quebec, the EV subsidies, yes, they reduce emissions at the price of $400 per ton. So when you've got a cap and trade system that's reducing emissions at $21 a ton, and you're going to subsidize EVs for $400 a ton, you've got to wonder about whether that's a good expenditure of public funds. Okay. Well, so you go through these policies and you want to think about which ones are expensive and which ones aren't, and only do the cheap ones.
What about subsidizing fossil fuels, which we do to the tune of more than $1 billion a year? The federal government, in its next budget, could snap its fingers and eliminate a bunch of those.
So as it turns out, when I was the Clifford Clark economist at Finance in 2009 and 10, I somehow got assigned to be and labeled as Canada's expert on the fossil fuel subsidy issue for the G20 discussions, because the G20 countries had made a commitment to reduce fossil fuel subsidies. And one of the things that I learned at Finance Canada is that, in fact, we as a country do not have explicit fossil fuel subsidies. What we did have were a set of tax preferences, and most of them, by the time I came along in 2009, had been eliminated. So I question the $1 billion number. I think it's wrong.
You don't think it's there?
Correct. I'm not saying it's zero. I'm saying it's much smaller than it used to be, and it's much smaller than most other countries is.
Let's try this. The Dalton McGuinty government, over the course of its time in office, which was about 10 years, shut down all the coal-fired generating stations in this province. Not easy to do, to be sure, but a massive reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as a result of that one policy decision. Can a carbon tax have the same kind of dramatic impact that one decision did? Yes,
depending on what the size of the carbon tax is. So Alberta, it's interesting, Alberta has a scheduled increase in the carbon price, and they also have a scheduled phase out of their coal-fired electricity plants. And so the question is, how much of that phase out would have happened anyway with the rising carbon price? Did you really need the regulations to do it? And the answer is you got most of the phase out that's scheduled to happen. You get most of it with the carbon price. A carbon price, if applied to coal-fired electricity, if you apply the carbon price there, then that increases the cost of that production. It then has to compete with low carbon electricity, and over time you're going to phase it out. Now, Ontario phased it out and phased it out quickly. One of the reasons that it was able to do that is that Ontario and the rest of the country went through a pretty serious recession in 2009.
Which, quote unquote, helped.
Which, well, yes, it helped reduce our demand for electricity and reduce our emissions. But that's not really, that's what I like to call the East Germany way of reducing emissions. It's not a great way to do things. Not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, let's, in our remaining few moments here, let's come full circle here. And, we talked at the beginning about the message that your side is trying to advance. And you remember the cover of Maclean's magazine with those 5 guys on the cover, The Resistance.
How could I forget it?
So Jason Kenney, who knows, he might be the next premier of Alberta. He's against the carbon tax. We know Doug Ford's against it, Scott Moe in Alberta, Brian Pallister in Manitoba. I don't know how the next federal election is going to go, but if Andrew Scheer becomes the next prime minister, you can bet that this carbon tax that the current government has tried to bring in will disappear as well. I wonder how badly you're sleeping at night now, watching the political tides seemingly, going pretty strongly against your side of this argument right now.
First of all, I sleep very well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
So the Resistance, those 5 individuals are clearly against carbon pricing, but it does lead you to wonder what they're for. Because what I don't hear from the 5 of them, for the most part, is that they think climate change is serious, that they are worried about the costs that are being imposed today, and they're not putting an alternative in that policy window.
Scheer says it's coming.
It's pretty...
Andrew Scheer says it'll come during the campaign, his alternative approach.
So we'll see. Yeah. But it's easy to throw grenades at any policy. No policy is perfect. And a carbon price that gets introduced, I don't think any Canadian carbon price is perfect. I think the federal plan is not perfect. And I think all of these policies will get better over time, like most of our policies do. They improve over time because we find glitches. But it's also easy rhetorically to complain about a tax, right? Who really likes taxes? Well, but climate change is costly today. And if we don't act today in a serious way, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And so I now have an empty nest. My children will soon start having children. And you start to think about those future generations. So if we don't act today, then we're going to have to, at some point, wake up and act way more in the future. So let's act now, let's be responsible about it today, but also let's be responsible in terms of designing a policy that is the best possible policy for the economy. So if they don't like carbon pricing, I get it, but give us their alternative. And I bet you that their alternative because apparently it won't be based on carbon pricing. It's going to be higher cost. It's going to be worse for the economy, worse for economic growth, worse for jobs, worse for wages. So why is that better?
Do you think this is what the next federal election is going to be fought on?
I think it'll probably be one of three things. And don't ask me what the other two are.
Well, immigration's probably one of them.
Okay.
And yeah, we can throw some chips on the table for what the last one would be. Have you, my last question, have you had a chance to meet yet with the Ontario Minister of the Environment or anybody with the Ontario government to try to influence what kinds of more demanding measures they say they're about to bring in?
I have not, but Ecofiscal is now working on, did you know that Ecofiscal is going to end at the end of 2019? We are scheduled to end at the end of 2019, and we are on schedule. So we are coming out with our second final report in something like April. And before that report comes out, the report is all about, I mean, it may as well be titled, you know, if not carbon pricing, then what, right? So it's basically an exercise that compares carbon pricing with other kind of realistic approaches. And we'll be discussing with many people behind the scenes before that report comes out about the results in there and how those results could be used to inform policy choices.
Good. We'll see you back here in 4 years? Maybe sooner.
Hopefully sooner.
We'll see you.
That's
you. Chris Ragan. He's the director of McGill University's Max Bell School of Public Policy and, of course, chair of Canada's Ecofiscal Commission. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.